DIYers, welcome back to part 2. There's like maybe 3 whole videos in the entire series, but they're pretty useful to show you what you'd have to go through if you're going to do this yourself. Last time we left off was I had a giant leak in my wall, which made me had to rip my cabinet off, which made me had to hire a plumber because there's just some things that I'm uncomfortable doing, and later on I get comfortable doing those things, but not right now. So we hired a plumber to take care of the serious issue with the pipe right around some seriously crucial and high voltage wires in the worst place you could stick pipes, but they did it in the house design. We talked about what we had to do and how we had to clean all that out, and along with what we're gonna have to start to get. So if you want to see that video, it's right up here somewhere in the iCards, also in the description below for the actual playlist of this series, where you can see the entire series in bulk if you think this series will help you do exactly what I had to do in this situation. But now we're moving on to what kind of materials we're gonna get, how we're gonna put them together, and what we're gonna do for drywall, and we're gonna get all that in a 3-part series. We're gonna get this all done. Stay tuned, it's all starting right now. The last time that we were here, we were in Home Depot and we were gathering supplies. We gathered R13 insulation. The other stuff was R11 for the label. I'm sure that's kind of a marketing gimmick because it's the exact same thing. We got all the trowels, the buckets, the mix. We'll be going over all that later on in the session. Meanwhile, we let this thing dry out and it did a pretty good job. Later on, after I posted the episode 1, a few people from the audience said that I should have used Kills plus the bleach water mix or Kills plus the vinegar water mix, and I should have done it in multiple steps to ensure that it was all dead. I didn't do that, so it's kind of worried. And I'm hoping that the dry Arizona climate will save me, and that this stuff here, this cleaning vinegar, was enough. I figured it's the most easiest because we're going to have to cut drywall in symmetrically sound shapes unless you just want to be artistic for no reason. That's the game. So we're going to go ahead and measure this out and cut this out the best we possibly can and just chip it off. Alright, so this is what I got from Home Depot. I got this R13, which is their latest and greatest stuff. There was no R11, it was just R13 faced. And so we got the face stuff. That was for it. We have, dang it. Okay, we got fiber tape. I don't know why I bought so much fiber tape. Really for joining stuff for repairs. I have some other stuff I'm gonna take care of later. The other guy just recommended paper joint tape. I got a set of different types of plastic taping knives. And I got a smaller one, so I got this plastic trowel, like just a single-use DIY trowel. And once you have your stuff, you just scrape it off in there. Scrape it off. And this stuff is the all-purpose joint compound. We'll be using this to join all the stuff up. I also have drywall screws. You guys have a few studs here. Pieces of wood to join parts that we're not necessarily going to be cutting in so far. Use this. So I strategically cut the drywall to the measured spots. And now before we do that, we just got to stick the new insulation in. Note that you can just kind of staple it in there so it sticks, although I think that was pretty unnecessary. Somebody told me to do that, but this stuff's not going to go anywhere. Also major fail, not wearing any gloves, and this is fiberglass. And yes, I did pay for that. I just didn't show it to you in the video because it's embarrassing. Because I had this cardboard box and I cut it into pieces and I place it against the wall. Alright, so the shims. One thing that I forgot to get while I was down there were shims. I mean, I saw them. I didn't know what they were. I asked the guy what they were. He said I didn't need them. But you do need them. They're like super thin cardboard pieces, like strips, just like what I showed you. Only that was actual cardboard and not near as tight packed or useful. I used it for the same purpose, and that was to level out the irregularities in the wall, because to think that you're going to cut drywall like this and stick it back into your wall and it's just going to line up straight with no like warps or defects is not true. You're going to need shims. Like right here in the corner, it bowed in really bad, and if I didn't stick in like my own little DIY shim there, it wouldn't have worked. But it would have been way better just to get like the pack. It wasn't very expensive. And then my friend Paul, who comes down here, who is like a former, you know, person in the trades turned nurse practitioner, but still like has this closet life of doing trade-like things, comes down to critique my work and gives me a few pointers. One of those is to bevel out the creases and straighten out the stuff. He had all these other tools. This is like a scraper tool to straighten out the drywall on the edge, kind of like a planer or a belt sander to do the same thing. And then to carve a bevel out there, so when you put the joint compound in there, it has something to grab onto and hold for when you end up putting the joint tape. And then he's over here checking my seam job and then gives me grief about that. And then, well, like I said, get the shims. And then here's our mud. And we'll be diluting using the plus B joint compound from USG sheetrock. We still have this stuff just in case, but we're gonna see. The gentleman at the Home Depot who gave me the advice for the joint compound told me to get the premix stuff. And then Paul came over and said that that stuff was not good for what this is. And he instead brought his own stuff that you have to mix in a bucket. We'll show you how to do that here a bit later, but right now he's filling in those seams.
And we don't have green drywall.
I don't. So the reason I like this stuff, especially for corners, is it already comes creased. So there isn't a whole lot of thinking. You already get your crease with it. So when you put it on a wall, I like to make sure that my crease is facing out if I'm doing a butt joint, because that way when I start to push it, I don't accidentally push it into the joint, because it actually gives it some support. But that's just me. Everybody has that.
I see.
Some people will wet the corner. They'll wet the tape. Mm-hmm. Some people say you don't have to. It's all personal preference. On walls that are like 10 feet to 12 feet, sometimes I'll re-wet it a little bit. Pre-wet it. Could have probably pre-cut it, but that's all right.
I went for like 5 minutes.
So I'm going to show you how to do this piece right here, because we got multiple joints.
Sweet. Then I'll do the next. I'll do the other side myself.
This is probably a little bit runny, but that's okay. As long as it doesn't go sliding off the wall, you're good.
Yeah. So it's running, but it's still
stays.
staying on the knife. Okay. All right. So what Paul is doing here is we gave it a pretty nice, copious but still flat and level amount of the joint compound, and then he gets a piece of tape and puts it and meshes it into the joint compound. And after that's done, we go ahead and we reapply with, I think that's a 6-inch taping knife, or 5-inch. We push it back down on over it, and then once it's there, we go back over it again before it dries. Because as the joint compound starts to dry, it starts to suck in. And so if you don't do it and you don't make sure that that piece of joint tape is completely wet, then it will start to break off and deform from the wall. We don't know the science of it, we just know that that's how it is. And so there's a pretty copious amount of joint compound used, which eventually all gets flattened and leveled out. This is just the initial process of how we are binding and joining it together at this point. Okay, so now that we have a pretty copious amount of joint compound underneath and over the top of the joint tape, we are now going to go ahead and put an initial layer with a 12-inch taping knife. We need the 12-inch taping knife because you need to bevel it at both sides. They essentially make a super thin like triangle. So you stick a bunch of it over top and then you bevel it out, you feather it out as you go over. And so you'll kind of do that by kind of curving, just like this. You curve and kind of keep the left side of your taping knife slightly up while the other side's firm pressed against the wall, and it's 12 inches out either way. That way you can't tell that it's taped out. It looks as flat as possible, even though it's being beveled and feathered out with the majority of the bulk compound over the joint tape. And this gives it a flat image. And so if you look at any wall, you can tell that there is not flat stuff if you really just pay attention. But most of the time, to the naked eye, nobody ever knows. And this is why, because you just feather and bevel it out, just like Paul's doing now. And it takes a little bit of time, but the good thing about drywall is if you just mess this part up, you can always just resand, repull, and redo the whole thing. It's one of the very few projects in the construction and contracting realm that you can just redo, and you don't have to completely get new material. So it's fairly risk-free if you want to put through with the frustration.
actually want to leave a layer
Okay.
for the tape to sit in. And you want that layer to try to pretty much be the same width all the way across. Again, it's always going to suck up to the drywall.
I'm not going to. I'll edit it out to make this look pro. That's a lot.
So that's what you really want it to look like when you're done.
I could do that.
I mean, you saw how I did it, right? First you put mud down, you make about 1/8 to 1/4 inch, right? Then you squeegee it out a little bit. Really, you should give it a couple minutes. Then I like to just do this, and then go across. And if you do it right, you should only have to do it
No,
once.
there's people that say that's the right way to do it because
No, this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, but you said people would laugh at you, but there's people out there that do that.
No, this is, I'm showing you the right way.
Okay.
But.
Oh yeah.
So we're just gonna take
A little top layer of it
top
off.
layer off. Alright, so now we got what? Peanut butter?
That's like some chunky peanut butter.
It just looks chunky, but it's pretty much peanut butter. Sweet. Go the other way. Basically, a little bit more water.
Feels like shortening spreader, or looks like shortening. Not shortening. Looks like cake batter.
Yeah.
About the consistency of cake batter.
I've heard some guys call it icing, cake icing,
Cake icing,
Heinz
okay.
ketchup, really thick mayonnaise, whatever you.
That's what Paul says. So prep your knives. You gotta round off the corners and make sure the blade's good. On step 2, which is in the playlist that I'll show you, this guy does it perfect. He more or less said to make a layer of mud about 1/8 inch thick over this being, and then you got to take a 12-inch tapering knife and kind of feather it, like feathering mean like this. On the other side, you feather it this way, so it's kind of like goes out to 10 inches to a foot down the bead, and they do the best job. But it's kind of learning my technique. I kind of got my technique a little bit more refined over here, you can see, as I was doing it. But by the time I got it down, one of these that just came out like really good. Like that one came out the best. By the time I really got it down, it was too late, and then you can't put new mud over mud that's like kind of drying but almost dry. And so the big thing is after you put the initial layer, you can come back and fill in and do a maintenance layer. We're gonna do a maintenance layer, and I have a sand block here. So we're gonna go and sand and smooth this down a little bit, making sure we don't score the tape or score this or damage this. And we're gonna go in here and do that and put a maintenance layer over, and then we'll let it dry. And then I think that'll really be like the next day we can maybe just wet sand. I'll get a sponge and show you how to wet sand it. But going in some of the areas here, sanding out the outer edges so they're fairly flat. We're very careful on going over the tape. We're just getting any uneven markings or anything that dried oddly as the stuff sunk in. And once it's all kind of prepped and smooth, we're going to go and heat over it again, and this will be a coat. Our coat. We're going to be doing this with a 12-inch taping knife. So thank you guys for checking out this video. I hope this inspires you to possibly take this project on by yourself if your insurance company screws you like they screwed me and you don't get stuck paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to a contractor, where this was very doable for the average DIY person. You didn't need terribly big tools. I mean, you needed a few things here and there, but nothing major. You needed like a skill saw, you needed some basic taping knives. You can get the plastic ones for dirt cheap for like a single-use DIY purpose, not like you're trying to go all professional and be a drywaller. I mean, we also go into how you retexture the wall, the easiest way, and then maybe some simpler ways on how you might be able to do all that, where we go over how you do that after you put the drywall in and you get it all nicely taped up and seamed up. And then obviously the painting the materials, which that's maybe the easiest part that likely all of you already are very savvy in, but we'll just go along the process anyways to talk to you about some of the few of the other options. This is kind of a major repair, and then how to repair some smaller ones. We also have in the playlist some smaller, like I had to save this pipe from leaking projects, some where we just fix it with simple putty, all the way down to shark bite fittings. And fixing the wall is very much the same process, but just the other two videos actually show you how to fix the pipe, along with this playlist which shows you how to fix the wall. If you want to see the entire playlist, it's up here in the iCards again, or down in the description below. If you enjoyed this video or any of the other videos on this channel, and you want to see this channel grow and thrive, check us out here on Patreon. For one of my two channels, find out how to help grow this channel and become part of its exclusive audience and get more out of it, like perks, rewards, coaching, extra videos, exclusive live streams, and much more. Thank you very much for coming over here. Good luck with your projects out there.